We got a pivotal game this week. Texans up against the Denver Broncos. And I need every single Texans fan out there, every single member of the Houston Texans organization to have this energy all week long. If you agree with me, go down, hit that like button, and let's get into today's video. Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, major Broncos injury news that will impact Week 9. Plus, the Texans just lost another tight end. What are they going to do about it? All this discussed on today's video. And let's get right into the main topic of today's show. Pat Surtain II out this week. Everybody talks about, him, Derek Stingley being the number 1, number 2 corners in the NFL. Well, Surtain this week, it was brought to everybody's attention that he had a pec injury, and the report is he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks, obviously missing this week up against your Houston Texans. A major blow to this Broncos defense. He is the best player in their secondary by far. So now you look at other guys, Riley Moss, J.O.D, Barron, Jaquan McMillan, Abrams, Drain. Those guys will have to step up against the Houston Texans. And Riley Moss will probably slot over to that CB1, but somebody that's really going to have to step up, J.O.D Barron. I talked with our Broncos host, Moose, about Barron, and he said, he's mostly played in the slot, but they've kind of mixed and matched him around all around the secondary and just said, go out there and make some plays. So J.O.D Barron, he's going to have to step up big time this week in that Broncos secondary, as Nico Collins might be coming back, Christian Kirk might be coming back, and the rookies, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, coming off maybe their best games as professionals for the Houston Texans. Now, they got to step up, and we got to step up too. I said I want that energy from the top of the show, and I need y'all to give me that energy all week long, because this is a must-win game for the Houston Texans if they want to get back into the thick of things. And we are, so far this week, trailing our Broncos channel, the Broncos Breakdown, by 6 subscribers this week. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I want to beat the Broncos on and off the field. If you haven't already, free videos all year long, and help me beat our Broncos channel in our sub battle this week. Let's continue on with more Broncos injury news. Marvin Mims Jr. in concussion protocol. And I think similar to what we saw with Nico Collins this past week, where he had to sit out this past week up against the 49ers, Marvin Mims suffered a concussion up against the Dallas Cowboys. His, availability for this week up against the Texans is going to be up in the air. Another weapon for this Broncos offense that might be out. Also, Nate Adkins, who is a fullback tight end hybrid for them, he suffered a knee injury, or has been dealing with a knee injury. He is questionable to return this week. I talked with our Broncos host Moose about him, and he said, he is really good at blocking, but unreliable in the receiving department. So maybe a blessing and a curse for this Texans team. Nate Adkins, whether or not he plays. And then a huge question mark for the Broncos. Drew Sanders, who barely played last year, started the year on short-term IR, and, it's been kind of like what we've seen with Joe Mixon, but around Drew Sanders for the Broncos. Will he return this week? They haven't, opened up his practice window since they placed him on short-term IR, so a huge question mark whether or not Drew Sanders will play in this game. The Broncos linebacker, I believe they drafted him in the 2nd or 3rd round, but has been injured throughout his entire NFL career so far. Will the Broncos gain another piece to that vaunted defense? Coming up in just a moment, the Browns just stole a Texans tight end right from underneath us, and bad news for your Houston Texans as the tight end room just got a little bit thinner. I'll talk about that and what that might lead to down the road. But before we get into any of that, let's play a little prize picks. Nico Collins, I'd mentioned, he will most likely be returning this week. And on prize picks, they have his receiving yards at 67.5 up against the Denver Broncos. If you know, you know. Let me know down in the comment section, though, more or less than 67.5 receiving yards up against the Broncos. I might be going the more, especially with Pat Surtain being out this weekend. I love PrizePicks. Producer Reed loves PrizePicks, and I know you will too. You can use that projection and many more with the sponsor of today's show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with PrizePicks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right, that never gets old. So keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. It's super simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. And also, I mentioned Nico Collins. Don't have to worry about putting him in your lineup because PrizePicks also offers injury reboots. If one of your players leaves in the game in the first half and doesn't return or doesn't play at all, PrizePicks won't count it as a loss. So you can go ahead and put Nico Collins, 67.5 receiving yards in your lineup, and you won't have to worry about it. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Here we go. The Browns stole one of the Texans tight ends yesterday, Brendan Bates. They had been having him on the practice squad, elevating him to the active roster. Well, late last night, the Browns went ahead and claimed Brendan Bates onto their active roster, meaning Bates will be on the Browns' active roster for the next 3 games at least. And this is bad news for your Texans because that tight end room was already thin. They now only have 2 guys on the active roster and only 1 guy on the practice squad. They have Dalton Schultz, they have Harrison Bryant, and then they have the 7th round pick, Luke Lachey, on their practice squad. I mean, this is not good for the Texans because they need tight end help. Nick Caley, a former tight end guy, he wants to use the tight ends. Dalton Schultz has been a big part of this offense. They tried to hit Harrison Bryant on a deep ball up against the 49ers last week. But if one of those guys goes down, what do the Texans even do at that position? Well, I was talking to our Browns host, J.O.D., and he did mention they are looking to move on from David Njoku. So it made me think, the Browns take one of the Texans tight ends from their practice squad, and maybe with this working relationship we have with the Browns, we've made a couple trades with them already, one being the Deshaun Watson trade. Does this mean the Texans could trade for David Njoku? The Browns, they are for sure going to be selling at the trade deadline, and like I said, they just claimed Brendan Bates. They also signed another tight end to the practice squad. They already have 4 tight ends on their active roster. How many tight ends do the Browns need? I think this is all setting up for a David Njoku trade as we near the trade deadline. And reminder, trade deadline next Tuesday, November 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We will be breaking down every single move that the Texans or any other teams in the AFC make here on the channel. So that's another reason why you got to hit that sub button. But it's clear and simple for the Browns. Harold Fannin Jr., who they selected in this year's draft, he's going to be the tight end 1. He's the tight end of the future in Cleveland, and I don't think they're going to extend David Njoku, and I don't think there's any room in Cleveland for Njoku any longer after this season. So that leads me to believe that the Texans are right in line to possibly make a trade with the Cleveland Browns. This is what our Browns host, J.O.D., said the cost would be. The Texans, they receive David Njoku, and we send one of our 4th-round picks in this year's draft for his services. Let me know down in the comment section, would you make this trade? Give me a yes, give me a no down below. David Njoku for a 4th-round pick. What say you? If you were in that room with D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio, are you pulling the trigger on this trade? Me, I am 100% making this move. The Texans, I think adding another dynamic tight end will open up the offense even more. I mean, I've been saying the past couple weeks, the Texans, they planned on having, multiple tight ends that they could use. Cade Stover, he had a hairline fracture in his foot. We don't know whenever he's going to be able to return. Brevin Jordan, he was going to be a big part of this offense, but had a season-ending injury during training camp. So, do the Texans look to add another key guy in David Njoku? Over the last 4 years, he has been a good receiving threat in Cleveland. His biggest year in 2023, over 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, 81 receptions on that year. Has had some injury issues. Last year only played 11 games, but still tallied over 500 yards, 5 touchdowns on the year for the Cleveland Browns. And I think this receiving threat will add another dimension, add another dynamic piece to C.J. Stroud and this offensive attack. I would be all steam ahead on the Texans trading for David Njoku. That's all I have for you on this video, folks. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, you can do so at Jeremy Chuggs. My DMs are always open. And you made it to the end of today's video. Help us in this sub battle. I need your help. If you're already subbed, send it to a Texans fan. Send it to one of your buddies. Send it to a family member. Say, hey, go hit that sub button. Help us beat the Broncos this week. And let's make this the #1 Texans channel on YouTube, because I already know we have the #1 Texans community on YouTube right here at Texans Today.